You can support me by turning on notifications, subscribing to my channel, and liking the video. Waiting for your comments. Gone in the blink of a distant lighthouse beam. A traveler's final sight before slipping into obscurity. It was on a chilly autumn evening when the sky was a deep indigo and the wind whispered secrets through barren pines that Thomas Ellery set out on what he would later call the journey that changed everything. A seasoned traveler with a quiet passion for exploring forgotten routes and abandoned landmarks, Thomas had heard legends of a remote coastal stretch where a solitary lighthouse stood as the last sentinel against a restless sea. Rumors swirled among locals of mysterious disappearances and unsolved vanishings along that rugged shoreline, a place where people simply slipped away, swallowed by the night. Driven by a mix of curiosity and an inexplicable pull, Thomas decided that night to follow the call of that distant beam, to see with his own eyes what might lie hidden beyond the mundane. Thomas' car rattled along a winding gravel road that cut through dense groves and rocky outcrops. The further he drove, the more isolated the world became. The hum of the engine and the steady rhythm of his thoughts were interrupted only by the occasional gust of wind shaking the worn asphalt. He recalled stories he had heard in a dingy roadside diner years before. Tales of travelers who ventured toward the lighthouse and were never seen again, their last moments witnessed only in the fleeting, ghostly glow of its beam slicing through the darkness. Some said it was the beacon of a phantom ship. Others whispered of an ancient curse that claimed the souls of wanderers. Thomas, a rational man by nature, had always dismissed such accounts as overactive imaginations fueled by isolation. Yet that night, as the sky deepened and the stars emerged timidly overhead, he felt a subtle disquiet that made his skin crawl. At long last, Thomas arrived at the coastal cliffs where the land fell away to reveal a tumultuous sea. Perched precariously on a jagged outcrop was the old lighthouse, its whitewashed exterior marred by peeling paint and the relentless battering of salty winds. The structure, though weathered and forlorn, exuded a forlorn majesty. The beam from its lantern room swept across the dark water in a slow, rhythmic rotation. It was as if the lighthouse itself were alive, its pulse measured in flashes of light that broke the gloom like secret signals to lost souls. Thomas parked his car in a narrow, overgrown lot and stepped out into the biting night. The wind carried the brine of the sea, mingled with the scent of damp earth and decay. Clutching his worn leather bag and a notebook filled with sketches and scribbles of his travels, he set off along a narrow trail that led toward the lighthouse. With every step, the crunch of gravel underfoot seemed unnaturally loud, echoing against the cliffs. He felt both exhilarated and unnerved, as if he were being observed by unseen eyes lurking in the darkness. As he neared the lighthouse, its beam suddenly caught his attention, a sharp, penetrating burst of light that sliced through the mist like a knife. For a brief moment, Thomas' heart skipped a beat. In that instant, he swore he saw something flicker within the light, a dark, indistinct shape that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Shaken, he paused and strained his eyes toward the rotating beam. The sea below churned violently, and the sound of crashing waves filled the air. Yet amid that cacophony, an eerie silence seemed to descend, as if time itself had stilled. Thomas scribbled a few frantic notes in his notebook, describing the uncanny vision. A shadow or a figure, perhaps a traveler like himself, lost in the beam's glare before disappearing into the fog. Determined to uncover the mystery, he pressed on, ascending a narrow, winding path that led to the base of the lighthouse. The door was slightly ajar, creaking as the wind pushed it back and forth. Inside, the air was cool and smelled of old oil and rust. A spiral staircase wound upward into darkness, and Thomas' footsteps echoed in the confined space. Each step he took felt heavy, as though the very structure were burdened with memories and secrets. At the top, he reached the lantern room, a small circular chamber with windows that framed the raging sea below. The great lamp, though long decommissioned, still held remnants of its former brilliance. The mechanism was silent, yet the room itself vibrated with an almost palpable energy. Thomas set up his camera and recorder, determined to document whatever he might witness. He sat in a dusty chair, his eyes fixed on the horizon where the lighthouse beam cut through the swirling mist. Minutes turned into an hour, and still nothing extraordinary happened, until the moment when the beam unexpectedly halted its rotation. The light froze on a particular section of the ocean, illuminating a patch of turbulent water that glowed with an eerie red way. Thomas' heart pounded in his chest as he watched in disbelief. Then, in the blink of an eye, a series of rapid flashes, almost like a coded message, erupted from that spot. The recorder captured faint, almost imperceptible sounds, like whispered voices riding the wind, and Thomas felt a shiver of dread cascade down his spine. In that surreal moment, the beam seemed to beckon him. Compelled by a mixture of terror and fascination, Thomas rushed to the window. What he saw defied all rational explanation. A small, solitary figure standing at the water's edge, silhouetted against the crimson glow. The figure was motionless, its outline blurred by the mist, yet unmistakably human. For a few excruciating seconds, Thomas felt as if the figure's eyes, if they existed, locked onto his, conveying a silent plea. Then, as suddenly as it had appeared, the figure began to fade, swallowed by the darkness and the relentless pulse of the lighthouse beam. With his heart hammering in his ears, Thomas left the lantern room and descended back into the cold corridors of the lighthouse. Every step felt heavier than the last, and the silence around him was thick with unanswered questions. He returned outside into the night, the wind howling like a lament for lost souls. In the distance, the ocean's roar mingled with the persistent, rhythmic flash of the lighthouse. The memory of that solitary figure, vanishing beneath a blood-red sky, burned itself into his mind. Had he truly witnessed a final, mysterious sight before disappearing into obscurity? Or was it the product of an overactive imagination fed by legends and isolation? Back at his car, Thomas reviewed the footage on his portable recorder. The video was grainy, the red flashes barely discernible, yet a single frame captured the fleeting image of a small human form standing on wet sand. The audio, when amplified, revealed whispers, barely audible, almost like the soft lament of the wind, yet layered with words he couldn't decipher. He rewound the recording repeatedly, desperate to extract meaning from the cryptic message. The more he analyzed, the more he became convinced that he had stumbled upon something inexplicable, a moment when the veil between our world and another had thinned, if only for an instant. Over the following weeks, Thomas scoured local archives, interviewed old-timers in the nearby town, and pieced together fragmented recollections of similar sightings. Some spoke of a traveler who had vanished from the area decades ago, leaving behind only a tattered journal and the echo of a final, desperate plea in the lighthouse beam. Others recalled eerie nights when the red light would flare up unexpectedly, casting strange shadows on the cliffs, and a sense of foreboding would grip the hearts of those living near the shore. The stories varied in detail, but converged on a single truth. Something mysterious, perhaps otherworldly, was connected to that distant beam and the dark waters it illuminated. As the months passed, Thomas' experience became both a personal obsession and a source of local lore. His story spread through whispers at taverns and on online forums dedicated to unsolved mysteries. Critics argued that atmospheric anomalies and optical illusions could explain the phenomenon, but the consistency of eyewitness accounts, coupled with his recorded evidence, lent an air of credibility that was hard to dismiss. Scholars in meteorology and paranormal research debated the possibility of rare light refraction phenomena mixing with bioluminescent plankton, yet none could fully account for the human figure or the haunting whispers. The more the mystery deepened, the more it ensnared Thomas' imagination. He began receiving letters from people claiming to have experienced similar phenomena: a brief glimpse of a figure in the distance, a sudden halt in the lighthouse rotation, or a ghostly whisper echoing in the night. Each letter added a layer to the legend, creating an unending trail of shadows that reached across generations. In his subsequent public talks and a modest YouTube channel dedicated to paranormal investigations, Thomas recounted his experience with a measured tone that mixed scientific inquiry with genuine awe. He explained how the encounter in the lighthouse had altered his perspective on reality, that in that brief moment, he had seen something that defied explanation, a silent invitation from a realm beyond our comprehension. He urged his viewers to keep an open mind, to respect the mysteries that linger in the margins of our world. The recording of that final, inexplicable sight, the figure standing on the crimson-lit shore, became a touchstone for believers and skeptics alike. While some dismissed it as a trick of the light or a hallucination born of fatigue, others saw in it evidence of a transient breach between our world and something far more mysterious. Now, whenever twilight falls over that rugged coastline and the lighthouse beam cuts a solitary path through the swirling mist, locals and travelers alike speak in hushed tones about the night when someone vanished in the blink of a distant light. They say that if you listen closely, you might hear the soft whispers of that spectral figure echoing a final invitation to join the silent void. And perhaps, just maybe, those brave enough to follow that call will find themselves standing on the same wet sand, gazing into the depths of a red-tinged horizon, where reality and the unknown converge. Until then, the unending mystery of that fateful night endures, a reminder that sometimes, in the quiet pulse of a lighthouse beam, we glimpse more than mere light, we catch a fleeting vision of a world that lies just beyond our reach, a world where travelers are lost, not with a scream, but in the silent, mesmerizing blink of a distant crimson glow.